What kind of MCAT score do you need to have a good chance at getting into medical school? This is probably one of the most common questions that I get asked as an MCAT tutor. But the answer might surprise you because what we consider a good chance at getting into med school is basically set by what the average is for people who get into medical school across the board. And in the US, that number is around 2%. So the average chance of getting into medical school is about 42%. Now, this is a chart of all the MCAT scores arranged according to GPA on this side and according to MCAT score on this side. As you can tell, even if you have a very high GPA, scoring less than a 486 leaves you with about a 4% chance of getting into medical school. As you go farther and farther up the score chart for the MCAT, you eventually cap out around greater than a 517 score at about 82.9% or 83% chance of getting into med school. So the MCAT score that you get can never guarantee that you actually get into medical school because you still have to do well on your application and on your interviews. But if we take that 40% as a guide, we can do a couple things with it, like looking at what kind of GPA corresponds with a similar 40% chance of getting into med school based on your MCAT score. So somebody who scores a 3.0 to a 3.19 will hit a 40% chance of getting into med school once they are scoring in the 514 to 517 range. So a lot of people think you need to score this high, and if your GPA is very low, you actually do. But that trend goes down as your GPA goes up. So if we score in the 3.2 to 3.39 GPA range, then reaching that 40% acceptance rate happens when you're at around 510 to 513. When you get to a higher GPA, let's jump up to, say, a 3.6 to 3.79 GPA, that 40% acceptance rate happens when you're at a 506 to 509. And finally, when you have a nearly 4.0 GPA, that 40% acceptance rate happens when you're at a 502 to 505 range. So it is possible to get into med school with at or above the national average chances once you hit a 502 to 505 MCAT score if your GPA is really high. So this is a perfect reminder to prep for the MCAT, but to also keep in mind that your GPA needs to stay high. So keep the long-term vision. And if your GPA is already lower than you wanted it to be, this is where you buckle in and you knock the MCAT out of the park. If you have any questions, drop me a line at mcatboss.com and mention Matt on TikTok or on YouTube in order to get a discount on MCAT tutoring. And I am there to help you through the application cycle as well. See you there.